Brock Purdy against the Browns defense. It might seem like deja vu. Last week, we were talking about the 49ers against the number one Cowboys defense. Well, now it's the number one Cleveland Browns defense. The 49ers, because their offense knocked the Cowboys out of the number one spot. Dallas is down to number 8 DVOA. Dallas is down to, I think, number 5 or 6 in points per game allowed. 49ers actually number 1 in points per game allowed. But Cleveland, the advanced metrics love the Cleveland Browns as far as defensive play goes. So the 49ers have a chance to knock another team off of its pedestal. Let's check this out. Take a look at team tiers. I think that this right here illustrates the challenge for Brock Purdy, and it also illustrates, let's be honest, the challenge for the Cleveland Browns. So x-axis is going to be offensive strength. Look at the 49ers all the way over on the right side. Only Miami has been better as far as offensive efficiency goes. Y-axis, well, they're the Browns. The defense has been head and shoulders above every other unit in the league. So this is a really exciting matchup because guess who else has been head and shoulders above everyone else in the league? Brock Purdy, top right. He's been the most efficient quarterback against perfectly covered plays. In fact, the only NFL quarterback who has been efficient and not negatively efficient or inefficient on perfectly covered plays. And he's been one of the most efficient quarterbacks on non-perfectly covered plays. Here, Brock Purdy, top right. So the 49ers offense behind only Miami's efficiency-wise. But despite that, they're still knocking the doors off of actual passing efficiency. Knocking doors off of their quarterback efficiency. I think they probably need a little bit more rushing efficiency, maybe a couple 70-point games to match Miami. All kidding aside, Miami did generate a ton of this ranking when they were up big against the Denver Broncos, who have a terrible defense, and the 49ers have been catching them on a week-by-week basis. Do they continue to catch Miami offensively, even against Cleveland, that defense that's way up here? Well, we'll see. So let's talk about Brock Purdy against that Cleveland Browns defense on this beautiful Wednesday night. I will say this, Cleveland's number one defense has a hell of a vet-savvy defensive line. I'm going to pop open the depth chart so we can talk about this Browns D-line. Take a look at this. Of course, you have Myles Garrett. And, Myles Garrett, this is a guy that doesn't have a weakness like Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is fast. He's disruptive. He's the league leader in pressures. He's going to get sacks. But you can also run right at Micah Parsons because he's a little bit lighter and he's not good at defending the power run. He's more of a slippery player. He's not a power player. Myles Garrett is all of the above. If there's somebody that might rival Nick Bosa as far as an all-around skill set goes, it's the player who the 49ers will face this week in Myles Garrett. And he's been playing a lot of downhill football this year. Already has 6 sacks, already has 23 pressures. He is rightfully at the very top or close to the very top of that Defensive Player of the Year conversation. But on top of Garrett, they now have Zadarius Smith. I don't think Zadarius is an A-list edge rusher, but he's definitely a B-list edge rusher. No lower than that. Used to play for the Packers, then played for the Vikings. And, the 49ers hope that Randy Gregory has the same kind of impact that Zadarius Smith has had for the Cleveland Browns, playing opposite of Myles Garrett. Dalvin Tomlinson has been a kind of a B-plus interior lineman. He's not at the level of Aaron Donald, not at the level of Hargrave, but he's definitely a guy that's hard to block, and they signed him this offseason from Minnesota. Shelby Harris, the right defensive tackle for this Cleveland Browns team, also a respected player on the inside. That's a good line. They may not have the depth that the 49ers do, but 1 through 4, they've been really, really solid in this Cleveland team. Again, when I showed you that defensive efficiency, they've been head and shoulders above everybody else. It's going to probably be raining a little bit in Cleveland on Sunday. This is going to be a hell of a test for the 49ers. One thing, I talked to Jake Brendel and I talked to Spencer Burford today in the locker room. I also talked to Nick Bosa. One thing that they mentioned about this Cleveland Browns D-line, these guys fire off the football like the 49ers. There are 2 types of defensive lines in this league. There are defensive lines that read and then they react. So they're doing a lot of reading off the snap, and then they decide what technique is going to be used moving forward. And then there are defensive lines that just fire off the football. Those D lines, they can be a little bit more vulnerable against the run, but they're really good pass rushing defensive lines, especially if they have the personnel to execute that kind of plan. San Francisco, they play a fire off the ball kind of defense. Cleveland does the same thing. So Brendel and Burford were saying we faced this type of defensive line in training camp of the 49ers. Now we get to face this type of defensive line in a game. So they feel that they've had some preparation, but they are not downplaying how difficult this is going to be. Myles Garrett, again, he's one of those guys that can line up anywhere. He could line up over a guard if he wants to. He was doing the Allen Iverson fake dribble earlier on this season when he was really feeling it ahead of a rush. You can go ahead and type that in to YouTube or Google or wherever you want to type it in and see Myles Garrett with some of the swag before a play. This is a good football player. And this is a guy who should scare you. This is a guy who's hard to run against. I have the Cleveland defensive metrics here as they relate to the 49ers defensive metrics. Cleveland is the very bottom row, 2023, number one in EPA per play, number one in EPA per pass. And again, you can't just run straight at Myles Garrett because he's good in everything that he does. Number 3 against the run. High sack rate, not that high of a blitz rate. This is a team that can get pressure with 4. So how do you beat the Browns? Well, let me put it this way. They run cover 1 63% of the time. This also might sound familiar because last week at this time, I was telling you that the Cowboys run cover 1 63% of the time to be number 1 in the NFL in that regard. Cover 1 is when you bring one of the safeties down into the box. It's something that's designed to slow opposing run games. Then you play a lot of man coverage on the back end. The reason the Cowboys are no longer in the number 1 spot is that the 49ers and Brock Purdy were so good passing the football. They were so lethally efficient against the cover 1 that Dallas had to move out of it. They had to drop the safety back. So the key is that Brock Purdy needs to loosen up cover 1. Pass sets up the run just like run sets up the pass. It's a symbiotic relationship. They loosened up cover 1 with George Kittle. George Kittle had a big game against Dallas's cover 1 in January. George Kittle had a huge game with 3 touchdowns on Sunday. And I think that George Kittle, with that run blocking, pass catching versatility, can also have another big game for the 49ers coming up this weekend. Either way, maybe they dedicate a little bit more toward George Kittle. They have Grant Delpit, who's a really good safety. Maybe he's assigned to George Kittle throughout this game. Maybe Kittle has a smaller game this time. But the 49ers, they have too many eligibles to cover. Geometrically, they have a big advantage if Brock Purdy has time to find the geometric mismatches. And that's why beating Cleveland's defensive line is going to be of utmost importance. The 49ers have to slow a really good defensive front. You could do that in several ways, right? You could do it in quick release fashion. You could do it through the run game. That's the most popular fashion. And I think the 49ers run game executes the way that it can. And we know that this has been a really good run blocking unit so far. The run blocking for the 49ers O-line has been ahead of the pass protection. If that run game keeps on churning behind Christian McCaffrey, then the Browns will have to show their biggest weakness. They'll have to be heavier on the field. They'll have to put out personnel packages that can stop the run. And if you do that and you have to have 3 linebackers on the field, this is where I think the 49ers can really exploit Cleveland. The third linebacker is this guy right here, Sione Takitaki. He's given up a passer rating of 155 into his coverage. Anthony Walker Jr. also has not been good in pass coverage. Also a rating of over 100 given up. So if you force Cleveland to have 3 linebackers on the field and you do that by running the football effectively, I think you destabilize this defense and you can capitalize on matchups at the second level. You can capitalize on those little option routes from Christian McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel can do his thing. Everybody essentially can run mid-level routes and exploit what Cleveland is trying to do with their linebackers. So running the football to fuel the pass and passing the football to fuel the run is huge against the defense that it's very good up front and is very aggressive with its cover 1. Now, take a look again at this Browns depth chart. They've got a good front. They also have a good back end. I talked about Grant Delpit. He might be the best player on the back end. He's playing really good football this year. They have Juan Thornhill, who used to play for the Kansas City Chiefs. You might remember him. Then they have Denzel Ward at one of their cornerback spots, Martin Emerson Jr. at the other one, and Greg Newsome is the slot corner. Kyle Shanahan was really complimentary of all of these defensive backs during his press conference today. Kyle was talking about how the Cleveland Browns have played really well on islands. When you have a team that's as aggressive as they are up front, and they are with their front seven, you better have cornerbacks that can win on the back end. And between Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson Jr. and Greg Newsome II, the Cleveland Browns absolutely have one. If there's one weakness, though, that might be preventing this Cleveland defense from being considered great, even though they've been very efficient, they've only forced 3 takeaways all season compared to 7 by the 49ers. So maybe those takeaways will come. Maybe, Brock Purdy was yet to throw an interception. Maybe this is the week that it happens. But so far, Cleveland has not been able to successfully prey on footballs the way that a truly great defense has. And that could be something to keep an eye out for in this football game. But the keys are consistent every single week for a 49ers team that is as talented as this one. And they are to keep the opposing defense off balance so you can use your adaptable skill position weapons, guys that can either take a handoff or go out for a pass pattern, so you can use them against the defense that's on its heels, that doesn't know if run or pass is coming. If that happens, you take the steam out of a really good pass rush. They've got all those savvy vets up front. You can have them a little bit confused. And if that happens, you also can get the third linebacker on the field. That starts with the run game. So pass to set up the run to set up the pass. To me, this is an extremely intriguing test for Brock Purdy because Cleveland has had an extra week to prepare. So they're going to they might throw some 5-man fronts at the 49ers. They might throw some exotic coverage combinations at the 49ers. They know that if they can get some momentum early, just sprinkle some doubt into the 49ers' minds in the rain at home, that they could maybe get this 49ers team onto a path that it's not used to, because they've dominated their first 5 opponents. So Cleveland's going to want to start out fast. They're going to want to test Brock Purdy. I will say that Brock has faced everything so far, from extremely high blitz rate against the New York Giants, 85%, to hardly any blitzing the week after against the Arizona Cardinals. So he's more and more battle tested by the week, Brock Purdy is. And to me, that's fascinating, because all of his prior experience and his lessons that he's learned so far in the NFL, they might be necessary to have a good performance in this game, again, against the defense that has been sensationally efficient this season. For those of you just joining us right now, I put this up on the screen. Find Cleveland on here. That's the top. Highest team in the y-axis. Now, we'll talk about this in the second part of our preview. The Browns are nowhere near as good offensively, which makes them a 5th-tier football team, while the 49ers are a first-tier football team. So the 49ers are favored for a reason in this football game. It's because the offense is a lot better. But Cleveland's defense should not be taken for granted. So the big question is, can the 49ers knock that Browns defense down a peg? Can they say, hey, you guys have been really good against who you've played so far. Pittsburgh has been on their schedule. The Ravens have been on their schedule. But can you do this against the 49ers? And the 49ers, again, if we're going to use data here, are an offense that's way over here. So an offense that's further to the right against a defense that's further up. It's a big battle in this game. I think more of a big boy battle than last week because it's on the road. And I think somebody like Myles Garrett is a lot more adaptable than somebody like Micah Parsons. Even when Dallas was rated at the top defensively, Cleveland was either right there with them or a little bit ahead of them, depending on the week. So it's the 49ers' turn now to potentially knock Cleveland down a peg, or it's their turn to take that first bruise. I don't think they're going to lose this game, just because it's hard for me to see PJ Walker beating the 49ers if he starts in place of Deshaun Watson. It's even hard for me to see Deshaun Watson beating the 49ers. But I'm talking specifically about Brock Purdy against that Cleveland defense, and Christian McCaffrey against that Cleveland defense, and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle against cover one, because we know he's been so good against cover one. And then that line against Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. I mean, so many good matchups. But I think where, you start to lose the name recognition for Cleveland, where you start to develop the advantage for the 49ers, is on that second level with those linebackers. Jeremiah Owusu, Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki for Cleveland. They are weak relatively at that linebacker level, especially in coverage. All right, let's open it up to some questions here on this beautiful night. I'm going to turn on the fan. I'm hot. So I'll give you the Cleveland depth chart, and I'm getting the fan on. Give me 1 second. Post your questions. All right. We are back. 49ers Q&A is here. Oh, that feels nice. I needed some of that air to keep this show going. Post your questions, says Mike. Oh, we got a Browns fan in here. She's just hoping for a close game. I've been impressed with that Browns defense. How could you not be? Think they need to force a few more takeaways? I don't know if this is going to be the week to do it, but it could be. And again, Purdy, no picks through 5 games. At some point, he's going to throw one. At some point, a lot of 49ers fans are going to have a meltdown because he's thrown 1 pick, or heaven forbid he throws 2 in 1 game. Maybe the Browns finally get him this week, and that could be what Cleveland needs to stay in this football game. How do the Browns stop the 49ers offense? Well, you cut off one of the roots of the offense. So you cut off either the pass game or the run game, make the 49ers one-dimensional, which I think is almost impossible to do. But if you cut off the run game, then you turn it into a drop-back game. And if it turns into a drop-back game, well, then Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, those guys can all have a big advantage over the 49ers offensive line. When the 49ers O-line, the composite run block ranking is number 3. The composite pass block ranking is number 21. Gives you an idea of where you want to play this game if you're the Cleveland Browns. All right, questions here. Let's get after it. Good questions, too. I think that the one thing that's been exposed in this Cleveland defense has been the linebacker level. And again, I'm going to keep on saying it. Sione Takitaki and Anthony Walker Jr. have not been good in coverage. Jeremiah Owusu has been a little bit better than those two, but if you can get this team into 3 linebacker packages, and I know that AFC North battles have a lot of base defense involved because the weather starts to get worse out there. Those teams are built on toughness. 49ers are built that way too. Maybe they can drag Cleveland into that style of game, and then they could beat them with the lightning. Turn it into a game of thunder and then hit them with lightning. Because once the third linebacker is on the field, that's when Christian McCaffrey can really, really start the feast. That's when George Kittle can really start the feast, especially if they're playing cover 1. Especially if they have 3 linebackers on the field and they're bringing a safety down. That's when Brock Purdy can feast, right? So that's the weakness. That's what I've seen on tape. That's what I'm sure the 49ers have seen on tape. But to get to it, you've got to run. You've got to establish that run, and that might take Brock Purdy setting up the run. Just depends on how they're playing them early in the game. But make no mistake, the Browns are really, really talented on the front 4. They're talented on the back end. It's not going to be easy to execute and establish the type of balance that I'm talking about. Well, you run the screen game if they're blitzing a lot. But if they're staying home and just winning with 4 up front, then it's going to be hard to win the screen game, right? Again, like specifics offensively are tough to say right now because you don't know what the game plan that Cleveland is cooking is. We didn't know that the Giants were going to blitz 85% of the time a few weeks ago. We thought they might blitz a lot because that's what Wink Martindale does. But 85% of the time, even the 49ers were surprised. So they adjusted to a screen game plan 2 or 3 drives in, and then that worked really well. So a lot of this is going to be reading and reacting in the heat of battle. Dr. 650 asks, how will the O-line hold up? That's a big question. I think they've been getting better. The run blocking has been on point since week 1 for the 49ers, and that helps because it helps. Even if you're not as good of a pass blocker, your pass blocking is going to look comparatively better if the opposing defensive line is on its heels because you're running well, right? It's just natural for that to be the case. So the O-line has gotten better over the course of the year. They've stayed good at run blocking. I think the pass protection has taken steps up. Think about it. The 49ers have played elite rushers in 4 or 5 weeks so far, and it's going to be 5 of 6 after this one. TJ Watt, week 1. Aaron Donald, week 2. Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams in week 3 of the New York Giants. Then they played the Cardinals, who don't have an elite rusher. And week 5, that was the Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. Now you're going to be stepping up against Myles Garrett, and you're going to see Zadarius Smith on the other end. You're going to see Dalvin Tomlinson out there. So the 49ers have been trial by fire for this offensive line throughout the first few weeks of the season. And that trial by fire has, I think prepared this team really well for this challenge. And if they're not fully ready for this challenge, well, they should be even more ready for challenges in November, December, January, and potentially even February, thanks to games like this. So I think it's a great question. How will the line hold up? It's an important question for the 49ers to answer. What do I think of where the 49ers bye lands? Well, it lands right in the middle of the season, so I don't think that it could be in a much better spot for the 49ers. I mean, you're not going to know where guys get hurt, where you need the bye earlier on. So generally, you just play the law of averages and you say, I want it halfway through. And then what you need to do is you need to earn another bye before the playoffs start as the number 1 seed. That can really put you into business if you're the 49ers. Do we expect the 49ers to lower McCaffrey's usage moving forward? I mean, they're trying to give a good 10 carries or 10 touches a game to the second running back. Whether or not that lowers McCaffrey's usage depends on the total amount of snaps, right? So I think that they're in a decently happy spot right now. You don't want him to take the hits like the hit that he took from Jaron Curse against the Cowboys. You don't want anybody to take those types of hits. McCaffrey is a workhorse running back. He's not a scat back, right? That's a stereotype that's incorrect about Christian McCaffrey. He's been a workhorse his whole career, going back to Stanford. He's never been hurt from overuse. He had some soft tissue issues in Carolina. They weren't like overuse issues. So he believes he can handle it. The 49ers believe he can handle it. And you naturally want to limit your star player's exposure to a reasonable degree. That's why they have some depth in the running back room. And right now, Jordan Mason is playing really well. I mean, speaking of Jordan Mason, I have a picture for you. He started pointing 12 yards out from the end zone. Here's visual evidence. I thought it was closer. I thought he was like 6 or 7 yards out. Now it was 12 yards out. Jordan Mason celebrating. And then he was like, oh, crap. I better put my hand down and sprint. I don't want to become an example in the film room of getting tackled after I celebrated a little early. But that's 12. That's over 12 yards out. That's like 12 and a quarter out for Jordan Mason, who I thought ran tremendously well for the 49ers against the Dallas Cowboys. Just funny to look at. Pounded his chest in the end zone after he scored. Is Elijah Mitchell going to play against the Browns? Well, didn't practice today. He hadn't practiced in a couple of weeks now, so not trending in a good way. We'll see how he looks tomorrow if he does get out there. If he gets out there tomorrow, I would say yes. But right now, who cares about Mitchell? It's the Jordan Mason show. Mitchell can do his rehab behind the scenes. And then when he's healthy and the 49ers need him, he'll be back. I'm not saying that in a callous way, who cares about Mitchell? I'm just saying that the 49ers have another player who's filling in nicely in that running back 2 role. Is the Rams D a mirror image of the Rams 21 defense? Well, I think it's very similar to the 49ers defense in that they have 4 down linemen that like to fire off the football. They're not reacting at the line of scrimmage. They're attacking. They've got a good secondary. I wouldn't say that they're like the 49ers in their linebacker level, though. So I guess that's why you asked that. The Rams 2021 defense was really strong up front, good in the secondary, and rather weak at the linebacker level. And they did give the 49ers some trouble, obviously, in the NFC Championship game. But the 49ers gave that Rams defense more trouble than the Rams gave them in the long run. And that's because the 49ers beat linebackers that aren't good, right? They beat linebackers who struggle in pass coverage. So I think that could be a fair comparison. I have identified linebacker as the one weakness of this Cleveland Browns defense. Don't let me make you think, though, this is somehow an easy defense to beat. They have that insanely good efficiency for a reason. They're very, very strong up front and on the back end. I think Gregory will get a few snaps. I don't think it will be overly much. I think that they're working Gregory into the mix for December, January, and February, not for games in the middle of October. It's going to take a little bit of time to get that fully roaring, but it might start on Sunday in Cleveland. And, it doesn't really matter who starts because you're going to play all 8 of these guys anyway. They're going to come in waves. You might even have Cleveland Farrell start if you think that you're seeing a run on first down because PJ Walker is starting at quarterback for Cleveland. So don't get caught up in who's starting because the 49ers love to play all of their active defensive linemen. Michael Otis thinks that Kittle's going to have another good game. He normally does against these cover one teams. I don't think that anything happened to Drake Jackson. He's still there rushing. I think he has slightly above average pressure metrics. He had a great game in terms of sacks against Pittsburgh because a lot of opportunities came created thanks to his teammates. Eric Armstead directly contributed to 2 of those sacks, and Drake is doing what he does best. He's trying to get after the passer on a really loaded football team. So he had a 3-sack explosion, and now he's looking for number 4. Do I think that the Browns defense poses more of a threat than Dallas's defense? Yes, because I think Myles Garrett is a more versatile football player than Micah Parsons. You can run straight at Parsons. I don't think that running straight at Garrett's going to be as easy. I think the 49ers are going to do a little bit more work to keep this Cleveland defense off balance. Could Oren Burks start for other teams? Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are teams that Oren Burks could start for. Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner are hands down the best linebacker duo in football. So it's tough to crack that top 2, especially if you're playing a lot of nickel, then it's only the top 2 linebackers starting. Saw last year, Azeez Al-Shaair goes from third linebacker on the 49ers to one of the prized guys on the Tennessee Titans. They're very happy with him over there. It's looking good for Aaron Banks. I think that he practiced today, obviously. So I think that that's limited fashion. It wasn't a bicep. It was actually a shoulder for Aaron Banks, which is even better news for the 49ers. It was always the dreaded biceps tear when news of that injury first hit the press box. So I think that he's on a good track. I talked to him after the game. He seemed to be in good spirits. He got tested the day after and he practiced today. That's big for the 49ers. Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, no joke on that interior, going to be coming for the 49ers from the Browns. Yeah, we're going to see some Trent Williams against Myles Garrett. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to talking to Trent. I didn't see him in the locker room today. Didn't have a chance. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. Get the lowdown from Trent Williams on facing Myles Garrett because these 2 guys are both freaks of nature. It's going to be one hell of a battle. I need to watch a little bit more Browns tape. I know that Garrett can move around. I know that Parsons moved around a ton. I don't know if I think he's the most adaptable edge rusher in football with how differently he aligns on various plays. But I think Myles Garrett is also capable of doing some crazy stuff. So everybody on this 49ers offensive line needs to be ready. Is the 49ers yak down because Purdy throws downfield more? Yeah, I would say so. I think they've opened things up a little bit. They have the weaponry now. This is Christian McCaffrey at work too. He's this gravitational force. The field is spread open. You can start to attack downfield, provided the pass protection is good enough. A little bit more. Purdy's been tremendously accurate on intermediates from 10 to 20. So they've really tried to move that offense to that intermediate happy zone of Brock Purdy. And sometimes that yields yak and sometimes it doesn't. Doesn't yield quite as much as a shorter throw would be designed to yield. So I'm not exactly sure what the yak numbers are. That's a good question. I should probably be a little bit more well-versed on that. So I'll get back to that in a later video. I love the sarcasm here. The system quarterback of Brock Purdy, who is head and shoulders above everyone else in efficiency. There's Brock, top right. So the x-axis is EPA per play versus perfectly covered plays. There's only one quarterback in the entire league that has positive efficiency on perfectly covered plays. So there's only one quarterback making it work, making something out of nothing, and that's Brock Purdy. He's also really good against non-perfectly covered plays, as evidenced by the y-axis. He's also really damn good on this graph, top right. So, yeah, but he's just a system QB. That just needs to end. He is the system and a QB. I love that. Hazy Days loves Kittle's repeated nod to past 49ers greats, such as Gary Plummer's shirt. He's all about the history. George is all about the history. His dad's all about the history, too. I think they really, really appreciate the past of the 49ers. Steve, regular viewer Steve, says the difference in this game is Purdy to make the off-script plays happen. That's been a difference in a lot of games. He had four touchdown passes this last game, and all of them came from outside the tackle box. Now, on at least a couple of those, that was by design, but the first one wasn't. He went a little bit off script. He had to escape. I mean, you had the rush from DeMarcus Lawrence going around the hoop of Colton McKivitz. Purdy had to step up and to his right, get out of the pocket, throw a dime on the run to George Kittle. It's not easy stuff. He's working through his progressions. He's taking his time, but he's also playing with urgency. So, yeah, Brock Purdy off schedule, off script has been effective for the 49ers this year. Maybe not necessarily off script, but a little bit lower in the script. I mean, the flea flicker was nice. Brock Purdy's part of it was that he was getting drilled by Osa Digizua as he threw that football, and he threw a strike to George Kittle. Jimmy Garoppolo made a lot of nice throws downfield when he was getting drilled too. I always look at this as a team aspect of the cohesion that they showed on that play. Kittle selling that play, getting open, McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel available, both gravitational forces on the fake, right? And then Brock Purdy executing with the throw downfield. The consistency with which Brock Purdy has hit open men downfield, whether he's being drilled or not being drilled, that to me is what has made him truly special. He's been more consistent than somebody like Garoppolo in that regard. So they made great plays before, but the consistency has taken another step up, and that's how the 49ers have gone from good to great offensively. I don't know about the brotherly shove in the Eagles. I think we'll worry about that closer to that game. You've got to, I mean, Jalen Hurts squats, 600 something pounds. The Eagles get that good pad level on that quarterback sneak. So you have to match with good pad level, and you have to win the scrum. I think the best way to stop it is to prevent yardage from the Eagles, prevent 9-yard gains. So you're not facing 3rd and 4th and 1 against them, right? So you're in a situation where they can't run that play. I think that might be the answer for the 49ers. But that's not until December. Is there a conscious effort to move Purdy outside the box after his passes batted down against the Cowboys? I think a little bit. There was a few plays where there was definitely a conscious effort. I think that it's just there's a natural flow of a game too, where a quarterback, even if he's not consciously, running a scripted play to move outside the pocket, he gets a feel for Jonathan Hankins, the big guy, getting his hand up. He starts understanding, okay, this is not going to work. So he knows how to subtly move within the pocket to make sure that doesn't happen again. That was crazy with the Kittle one. You have the same play run twice perfectly in the same day. Both of the touchdowns went to tight ends, and both of them went to Iowa tight ends. Sam Laporta of the Lions, and then George Kittle of the 49ers. And that, what was really special about that play is that it took Dallas's aggressiveness. That's a defense that loves to just run and pursue. Took their aggressiveness and used it against them. Because not only one fake, but two fakes, and they went after both of those fakes like chickens with their heads cut off, and then you hit George Kittle to beat the defense downfield. So Cleveland's not nearly as aggressive. 17.8% blitz rate versus Dallas. They blitzed about twice as much. Cleveland is not a pursuit specialized team. They're a standard 4-man pass rush, vet savvy kind of team. Myles Garrett is a strong player who can play the run, who can play the pass. The Browns are different than the Dallas Cowboys, and I think they're better defensively than the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that this is a bigger challenge for the 49ers, especially since it comes on the road. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. The Browns only have 3 takeaways this season, only 1 interception. So the 49ers are ahead in that turnover differential department. They're +7. The Browns are -7. That's a big difference. If that holds up, I don't see the 49ers losing this football game. Colton McKivitz needs a shout out. Nobody is mentioning anything about the O-line. I'm mentioning a lot about the O-line. I think the O-line is the one piece, especially in pass protection, that still needs to get better, but it has been getting better. McKivitz has been getting better. He was a lot better than Mike McGlinchey against the Cowboys in pass protection, and that's a big, big deal. Spencer Burford still needs to get better, but he is getting better. I mean, all of this adds up, and the 49ers want to be in championship form by the end of this season. Nick Bosa is already the highest graded defensive player in the league. Whether or not he gets sacks doesn't change the fact that he's having a massive impact on pass plays and on run plays. They're double and triple teaming him. He's doing phenomenal stuff. He's been the best defensive player in football. So let's not measure Nick Bosa's effectiveness through only sacks. I'm looking for a couple more questions here. Yeah, Bosa has a huge, huge lead in the grades. It's crazy. He really is playing well. He absolutely is. All right, 49ers against that Browns defense. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good. They're playing a defense that has a hell of a defensive line, a hell of a player anchoring it in Myles Garrett. There is a weakness, though. It's on that linebacker level, and they're playing another defense that loves to play cover one. So maybe another big game for George Kittle a week after he scored 3 touchdowns. He's in his 30s now. Played a game at age 29. This next one, George Kittle, is going to be 30. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you all very soon. This has been Brock Purdy against the 49ers defense. Everybody hit that like button, hit that sub button before you leave. We'll talk to you very soon.